welcome to Man Down. This is the first of a series of podcasts where we would like to have discussions around men's mental health. It's called Man Down as opposed to Man Up, because we constantly get told to man up, and I think that personally I don't find that very helpful. But also when somebody's down, we pick them up. We're there for them. So the idea here is to have conversations with men, members of staff of the college, and potentially people from the outside, if anybody wants to come in, and just have a discussion around how we feel about our mental health, about being men in this world, and just to offer perhaps opening up some conversations and also offering support where it's needed. So it gives me great pleasure for our first of our series I'm Max Daldamulla, by the way. I'll introduce myself more formally in a minute and introduce here Dom Hodges, who is joining me today. Okay. I don't know if you want to start introducing yourself. Who are you and why you're here, I suppose?
Yeah, so my name's Dom Hodges. I am a course leader for sport, so fitness and training, personal training, and I'm one of the college's mental health advocates. So one of my major roles at the moment, alongside the course leading, is I'm actually one of the leads of the men's mental health lots of awareness group, and I have worked closely with staff on men's mental health awareness, first aid, so mainly looking at early interventions, that sort of thing. But yeah, so that's me. And again, at the moment, I'm working with primarily like 16 to 19-year-old men, okay, or chaps, and there is a big thing going through with like boys at this point in time where they're the body image. So a lot of work around that body image anxiety and that performance pressure they have based off of, we'll probably talk about it quite a bit in a minute, but like social media and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, that's why I'm here.
Okay. So, and I'm Max Daldamulla. I'm a course leader in counselling here at the college. I'm also a counsellor and supervisor in private practice outside of here. I basically train about 60 counsellors every year through our program. And obviously all of my students go on to do placements, working in a variety of settings. But also it might be something, perhaps maybe just reflecting a little bit on our personal reasons for being interested in mental health. And so from my perspective, obviously I have a professional interest in mental health because I'm a therapist. So I'm interested in that perspective. But also for me, there's also a personal reason. When I was a kid, I didn't want to be a therapist. I didn't even know what I was. I didn't even want to be a teacher because my dad was one, for that matter. I actually wanted to be like things like football player, a rock star. I wanted to be a fireman, all kind of quite manly endeavors, actually. But one thing that happened to me in the teenage years is I was feeling very, very inadequate, very anxious. I had a few things happen in my life that made me feel not good enough. And I battle with my mental health for many years, and I found all sorts of unhealthy ways of coping, including alcohol and substances, and it was actually in my nearly my mid-30s where I had the opportunity to go into some counselling, and I had the opportunity of turning my life around through being seen and held and supported in a counselling environment that led me to a change of career. And even though I was always interested in people and in the mind and all of that, then it became a profession, but also it became a way of surviving. It became the way, this interest in mental health and what makes people tick. It's actually what keeps me. It keeps me in the straight and narrow, absolutely, as it were. How are you? What's your personal?
So personally, so as a youngster, so again with the students I'm working with nowadays, so at 16. I was sitting about 19.5, 20 stone, so I was a big boy, and I actually got quite a lot of, so I got bullied quite a bit when I was at school and stuff like that. So like I was, found myself probably at that time, however many years ago, without giving away how old I am, there wasn't that sort of awareness of it back then, and it sort of you just dealt with it yourself, sort of thing. I've had other things going on. So in 2008, my dad died in a plane crash in Brazil. So I felt all those sort of emotions, sort of the shock, the disbelief, the anger, a sense that life is actually a bit unsafe, not always there. And I think it pushed me to a different area in terms of how I felt emotionally. And that sort of was my start of that mental health awareness of what I need to do to manage myself a bit better. Because again, finding those incorrect ways or not the best ways to deal with those emotions. Alcohol, whatever it might be, eating lots. Okay, because that's actually, I know some people go to not eating. My go-to is I eat more.
Yeah.
And then again, I found myself fluctuating back to that heavy dom rather than where I found myself now. And, I think I have more of a belief now around talking about it openly. And again, we're quite lucky in sports office in Bridgewater, where the guys I've worked with now for, some of them for the last 15 years, 10, 15 years, whatever it might be, we are quite open, and, it really helps to have those open conversations. And we try and push, talking to students about it, being open. I think that's where my, just trying to get people to talk about it. You can see people struggling. You want them to open up and talk about it. But they just, in sport especially, there is this real, sort of the manly culture of, I don't cry, whatever crying makes me weak, that sort of thing. And we're having those conversations about that and trying to understand that, get them to understand that it's okay. We wear once a month, we wear Boys Get Sad 2 t-shirts, which is from a website and linked to Calm, which is the campaign against living miserably. And we try and weight that just to raise that awareness, really. But that's where I've, that heightened awareness of the loss that I had, and then I'm very wary that people can have those moments. And that's sort of what brought me to here, really.
Yeah, and it's true what you say, that the grief, loss is an inevitable part of life. The older we get, the more that we have, and I can relate to it. I lost a stepdad when I was 12. And what I remember, there was a sense of culturally, as a man, just get on with it. Yeah. Just it's okay, man up. You've done enough crying, you should be over it by now. Yeah. Those kinds of comments that are very unhelpful. But it's interesting what you described, the fact that we're having to have this conversation, the fact that you have to purposely create spaces for boys and men to come and talk about, tells me that there is something in our culture that is deeply embedded around, I suppose, a kind of cultural and social programming about what is okay or not okay to feel as men.
It is, and it is quite scary, really. I remember having did a podcast with Steve, Chris, and Tom a couple of years ago. We talked about this student that I was talking to at the time, and he was had Brazilian Portuguese heritage, and he talked about how at home, he wasn't allowed to show emotions because that emotions makes him a pussy. At the end, and that is words from from his family, from his dad, from his brothers. And actually, you can see when he's saying that, you can see that he really wants to sort of break down those barriers, but it's so ingrained in him that we don't talk about it. And I think there is that it's a culture thing, and it is trying. And again, we talk about trying to break down those barriers, being more aware of it, and having those open conversations with each other, open conversations with students. To there's nothing wrong with being emotional. We've all got emotions. You're allowed to be whatever emotion you want to be. Because, we'll talk about it later, this whole mental health thing is on a spectrum from day to day, minute to minute, second by second, things can change. Your train might get cancelled and your mood changes. You might drop your sandwich on the floor, then the mood would definitely change. You know what I mean? And all those sort of things. As a sports fan, I'm a Man United fan, which is like...
It's a bit difficult recently, isn't it?
Yeah. And trust me, so in the last 12 years since, Alex Ferguson left, every 90 minutes, every weekend is this complete range of emotions that and it is that mental health thing, and it's on a very small scale, but that can have a massive impact on your day. Like, Man United lose, I'm in a terrible mood. Do you know what I mean? And and that's just a really easy way to put it into perspective for a student that can actually. But then you get over it. You will get over it, and then you do something to make yourself feel better, whatever it might be. And again, that's sort of where we sit, isn't it? It's just if we can keep pushing that conversation, keep having that openness, then hopefully people will move the journey forward and then be able to talk to each other about it. That's where we want to be. Totally.
It's interesting because that whole thing around our mood and our affect and our emotions really shape how we experience the day. I mean,
Yeah.
really, for example, if I'm having a morning and like I don't know, I get up and there's no coffee, and then the cat is put on the outside of the tray, and then my kids are not doing what I want, and the traffic is bad. By the time I get to work, I have an experience.
Yeah.
I'm stressed out.
Yeah.
I feel like the world is against me, and then I tend to project onto other people.
Yeah.
Everybody, I don't know about you, but when I'm late, everybody drives terribly.
Yeah.
You know, things like that. That's kind of things that happen, and it has. But more importantly, what it does when I'm in that space, it changes how I view myself.
Yeah.
Well, it changes my internal narrative, and there's those things that I say. That I'm not good enough, or that I'm too much.
Yeah.
You know, those kind of messages internal, and it's like a Radiohead churning away in the background, and it pollutes my experience of others.
Yeah, and again, like, is that sort of it's all in the mind, isn't it? Like, it's, you know, things, those smallest triggers can have, and then you do take it out on other people. Do you know what I mean? Like, you know, you find yourself, you know, maybe raising your voice at your children, or like not having the same conversations with people in work, or being offish at the start of the day, but like you know, going into Taunton, going into Bridgewater, impossible to get in and out of, you know, Taunton and Bridgewater sometimes, and then those sort of things are very small, little things can have a big effect on your day. But again, like, it's, you know, it's how people then can, you know, it's important then for people to give themselves time and space to just take a breath, just sit back. You know, we did some training with Louise Wills put on some great training yesterday about resilience. You know, and it's some of these things you can just do that are like mini micro breaks in those days where you just sit back and go, you know, breathing exercise, you know. And I know things like mindfulness and everything like that are things that some people go, oh, this is naff. You know, I don't believe that mindfulness works. Yeah. But actually, like, you know, it's worth for everyone to give it a go. Do you know what I mean? Like, we did this little the box breath thing in the training yesterday. Find it really hard to breathe in for 4 seconds. And actually hold that breath, do you know what I mean? But actually, it takes your mind off everything else because you're focusing on that breathing. But then that, again, is a real small thing that we can do on that day to just, like, give yourself, like, you're number one. I say it to people all the time. Say it at home, say it to people in, you know, to the students. You've always got to look after number one. Like, you're the most important resource at the end of the day, aren't you? You know, so if you're having a bad day, take that time. 5 minutes isn't going to impact anyone. Do you know what I mean? Like, whatever it might be. It might be like, you know, like here at Taunton, go and just walk through Long Run Meadow, whatever it might be. And that is such an easy thing, like, especially on a day like today where the sun's out, nice and fresh, a couple of deep breaths, it will just reset. You know, and that's the sort of thing we can look to. And that's the really simple strategies that we put in place for people to be able to do it.
And that's really helpful. And is that thing about sort of taking responsibility and doing something rather than allowing the emotions to almost otherwise become like a passenger in the back seat of a car, and your emotions are driving, and you have no control. All you can do is put your seatbelt on and hope for the best, right?
But nothing bad happens. Do you know what I mean? And that is it. And that's the thing about emotion and the mind, is that it is so powerful. And like, you've got to be able to. It's that early intervention, isn't it? Of going, bad day here. I need to do something to reset myself. Otherwise, it's gonna, you know, because then that will just spiral down. Do you know what I mean? Like, because at the end of the day, you know, we may love our jobs, but work at times isn't going to be the thing that makes you feel better about the day.
No, it can actually make you feel worse.
Yeah. So it's actually like, what can we do there to just take that, and again, take 5 minutes for yourself. You know, because again, like, if you can reset yourself, then you have more positive interactions with staff, with students, with, you know, with stakeholders, where it might be. And that makes a big difference.
And you mentioned two aspects there. One of them is sort of asking for help.
Yeah.
And the other one is then giving us permission to ourselves to actually maybe do that. And I just wonder, with the idea as men, how easy is it to ask for help? What kind of messages come up for us when we actually have to say, hands up, I'm throwing the towel, I can't do this by myself. What you know?
Like, it's for a man, it's very easy to go, oh, I need to do this myself, like, and go and take you 5 minutes per day. But actually, if it's got to a point where you need to then ask for help, I think there's a large percentage of men who would not ask for help, and that's, you know, we need to normalise the fact that it's okay to ask for help. You know, and it's completely normal to have bad days, and completely normal to feel those emotions. But actually, there's nothing wrong to ask for support. You know, and that support might be as simply as just taking 5 minutes off with a friend to go and have a walk and just to chat conversation. You know, and there's, you know, we spoke about it before, like that social support is so important to be able to go off and go, just gonna have a, you know, 5 minutes, just chat away from the office, away from the doomed four walls sometimes, you know, and that could be it. And that is a simple thing to do. If it gets to that stage where we don't look after everything that's going on, then it gets to that stage where actually we might need more serious support. And what we'd like for people not to be getting to that stage, because that's, again, sometimes quite hard to come by, and really hard to ask for at the end of the day. So, you know, it's about making sure that men, you know, we make it, if we can normalize it, then, you know, and that's the only way we can do it is by this. Do you know what I mean? Like men talking about it and talking about their experiences makes such a big difference.
I remember my therapist many years ago when I was going through that process of recovery, and before I became a therapist myself, used to talk to me about healthy pride and toxic pride. And there is something about healthy pride, is that kind of sort of being proud on your achievements and the people that you love, on your football team, you know, all of that. Toxic pride is the one that is about not showing vulnerability. Because we may see that as weakness. It's about that, and saying actually that if I ask for help, if I admit that I cannot do this by myself, that I'm somehow a failure, or I'm not man enough. You know,
and that is, you know, if we look back however many years ago, that is like stuff that some generations have been brought up on. Oh, and again, like, just people might still be brought up on it today. The fact that, you know, but asking for help is not a sign of weakness at all. It's a sign of actually awareness of, you know, you're not having a great time. And it's probably more powerful, maybe, you know, really good, a really strong aspect of your own personality to go, no, I'm not right. Do you know what I mean? And, you know, so if in the summer of 2024, a very close friend of mine took his own life. And, you know, that, you know, it was literally just as I'd started my summer holiday away with my family. I got the phone call and I was like, oh, crap, like, what the hell? You know, and for me, it was just like, how can that happen? You know, the devastation, that confusion, the guilt of what have I missed there? Do you know what I mean? You always put it back on yourself. And I think, like, then you want to then push that on to help other people. And you think, you know, and Phil was an actor, so he was in like one of the Batman films with Robert Pattinson and stuff like that. So a lot of it was down to him being able to mask his own, you know, and people will mask, you know, and they're able, as an actor, maybe he's able to put maybe a little bit of a show on. And everyone I ever spoke to said, like, you know, he was masking a lot. You know, there were some, you know, demons and stuff, and he's able to mask it. And I think, like, it sharpened my understandings of those sort of the invisible struggles that we don't see, that people don't want to talk about because maybe they don't want to be a burden on other people. I think that's what a lot of it is. Like, they think, oh, he's got a lot on, I can't talk to him, or, you know, it's, you know, it's how, you know, it makes me feel this whole work is actually, for me, it's more personal now. You know, I don't want that to happen to other people, and I don't want people to go through, you know, what Phil's family, you know, what his friends have been through with that. You know, and I want people to be able to, you know, it feels more urgent. Do you know, like, trying to get people to talk about it. You know, and it's more about what can we do, you know, and just making sure that people do, like, really, it's just a simple conversation sometimes, and just opening up to that one person, and actually, like, that one person might help you to realise what you can do better, what you can do differently to be able to take you to a better place. And actually, down the line, it might be you go down the support route. It might be going to GP. It might be going to counselling. It might be to, you know, some support groups. But for a lot of it, it's probably just like, what can you do for yourself to give you time? And it's actually like, what can people do to realise that they just need that little bit of them time? look after number one, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? And I think that's where we want to, we need to change that perspective for men, especially to go, I just need that time. And I think like when we look at with Phil's suicide, it opened up time like, then I just needed that time for myself. Like I said to my wife at the time, I said like, explain the situation. I said, look, I need to go and have 5 minutes for myself, and I'll be honest, I walked down the road, I cried, I felt immense pain, but it gave me that release that I needed, and then I could go back and then talk to her, or then talk to my friends about it, because people who knew him, I'd be able to then go and have those conversations, and then we start talking about the good times with him and all that, and it just makes you, then you start thinking about that. And that's sometimes you've got to have that little bit of you've got to show the emotion, and I think that's really important.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And what is sounds like for you, so a moment of deep pain and distress, but you've been able to take something from that, actually learning for yourself how not to be, or how to do things differently, and how to pass that on to others. That's really important. You mentioned masking earlier on, and it's very interesting because masking is very much linked with sort of the expectations that we have as men, about how we should be, and the narratives of society. Yeah. This also probably applies to women too. How we, for example, at the moment we're just about to start Christmas. Yeah. And you have all of these expectations of happiness and joy and achievement and status, which is linked, we also mentioned earlier, on social media. There's actually sort of very much amplified through the lens of mass media consumerism and social media about what a good life looks like. Yeah. And almost like somehow that if we're not having a good day, that somehow we failed that life.
Yeah, and absolutely. And I think social media is, the devil. There are good sides to social media. There are funny times where you can find yourself watching Instagram reels and stuff, and you find yourself, doom scrolling through that, whatever it might be. But there is a side of where everyone puts on this is my day from X 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. of being a teacher, and this person's woken up with a full face of makeup and everything's sunny. No one wakes up like that. Do you know what I mean? And the thing is, our students, not just our students, but a lot of people will look at it and go, I want that. Mm-hmm. That is the life I want. And and we bring back, masking is quite a big thing, where masking can only last so long, before it starts cracking. Yeah. And I think you then, when it starts cracking, you then start seeing that emotion, the anger, the deep sadness, all coming out and you see it in, we might see it in a student where actually they might get a question wrong in a lesson, or they might not quite understand something, and then all of a sudden they slam this down, or they have to walk out, or they get really, you can see them getting really angry at themselves. But them when they feel like students they feel like they have to mask a lot, especially if they're in a lesson or they're around people all day where they don't want to show that emotion. If you then go from 9 to 5, for example, as a student, you don't want to show any emotion, then it comes out on the bus, or it comes out when you get home. Do you know what I mean? Then you lash out at your brothers, your sisters, your mums, your dads, your guardians, whatever it might be. But that's quite a big thing.
And one of the ways that it comes often for men is anger. Yeah. Anger, and anger, not anger the feeling, but anger and aggression. Yeah. Right? Whether we take it out on other people through road rage or fighting, or whether we take it out on ourselves through self-harming, drinking too much, and so on. And there is something there about sometimes it's easier to feel angry than it is to feel, say, shame or something like that, because that is a lot more. It's a lot more vulnerability in that, isn't it? And that boy that boys don't cry, but we're allowed to get angry.
Yeah. And that's the thing, that old school line of thinking of boys shouldn't cry. Is puts the pressure on doing something else, and like you said, it will be the wild anger swing, or whatever it might be, the mood swing, and it might be lashing out at someone. Like I said, road rage. It's easy to shout at someone in the car, but then there's a simple strategy. Instead of shouting, come on, stick the music and have a sing along in the car. There's a lot to be said about singing. I ride to and from work. And I'll find myself sometimes just singing, as I go, and I must look kind of strange, sat there at the on my one headphone in, just sing along as I go along. Yeah. And I think, what do I look like to people? But actually, that makes me feel much better. And actually, there's a lot to be said for just, sometimes it is, you might be getting that emotion out through just being loud in your car and things like that. So, and it's what strategy can we use that when we don't want to use anger, because that anger is going to be on someone, and we don't want to show it in front of our children. That sort of stuff. And actually, can we show it can we put it out in a better way? And that's and it might be having a sing song, but then having a really good conversation with a loved one. And that's and so I find again, if I cycle home from work, that 20 minutes does a hell of a lot for me in terms of like being a sort out what's happening in my day. And by the time I'm home, like I'm in a better place. And again, like cycling's good for that. Sitting in Taunton Bridgewater traffic might not be the one. Do you know what I mean?
Or sitting on a bus.
Or
like
a bus.
You might be a young student sitting on a bus. You're not going to start singing Metallica or something.
No, well, there's not much Metallica you can sing on a train or a bus, is there really? Like, but yeah, so sometimes on a bus is hard, isn't it? Because again, if we look at a student's bus journey, some of them might be looking at 20, 30, 40 minutes on a bus. If they're still trying to mask that emotion, that's another amount of time where they're completely fighting against what is natural.
And that's the important thing, that is natural. That feelings are just the way, we've evolved to have them, right? With 4.6 billion years of evolution on planet Earth, and we came up with feelings. Either it's a quirk of evolution or it's a bad joke from God, whatever you believe in, right? We have them, and they're a guidance. I'm assuming that when we lived in the wild, we had to really trust our gut instincts and our feelings in order to survive. But now we live in a society where some feelings are acceptable, where others are not. And we learn too much. Feelings are a bit like, when I was a kid, I used to go to the beach and I would build sandcastles and I would try to stop the sea from coming over them. And it's a bit like, masking is a bit like that. You try to build a wall, you try to build a protection for something that eventually is going to take over. It's going to come out somewhere. And I think sometimes there are occasions in which we need to mask our feelings. For example, if I come to work and I've had a difficult morning, I'm not going to come and be all collapse in a heap in front of my students, because they need me to be solid and stable, right? But I need to find, at some point in that day, I need to find an outlet for it. Whether it's walking the dog, whether it's going for a run, whether it's going to the gym, whether it's journaling, calling a helpline, going to a support meeting, talking to my partner, whatever it may be.
And that's it. And again, it's for a lot of people, it's finding the right strategy that works for you. Do you know, because every single person is different. And I think it's how you do it, and it's the sort of the healthy coping. It's really, really important. It's if we can, people can learn to journal, or I always talk about this in my mental health training, of actually those strategies of the NHS 5 Ways to Wellbeing, which is something the college pushes. And it's something we talk about in the mental health training. Actually, things like learning a new skill is so important, because and it's really simple things like that. I talk about my friend, one of my colleagues, Gareth, who's he learned the ukulele. Perfect thing, 'cause he's got short arms, so it makes it great. But that was something that he did quite a lot, and then he advanced up to the guitar. Do you know what I mean? And it's just something that he's learned, and he's just spent a little bit of time on. And it sort of helps him, and it's just that thing you can do. And again, it's what people are doing to just balance it out. Do you know what I mean? And it is, for me, it's really important that people take that time for themselves, because if you're a parent, and you've got a 9 to 5 job here, you go home and then you've got another 2 or 3 hours of work to do with the kids. Do you know what I mean? Whatever that might be, just sometimes getting them to bed, getting them through the bath time routine, getting them to bed is a absolute mission. Do you know what I mean? And sometimes it's a bit stressful. And actually, again, you don't want to be shouting at them and all that sort of stuff. So actually, you have to kind of get through that, and then you look at your healthy coping strategies. What can you do now to just chill out before, and again, some people then, once they've done that, they'll go and sit back on the computer and do more work, and it's just that constant build that is unsustainable. And the thing is, there's no way that you can keep building without having some sort of release. And that release is either going to come out in a bad way, or we need to find those strategies to make it come out in a good way. And that's, that's what a lot of it people have to have a knowledge of. And especially, when we talk about men's mental health, it's sometimes a lot of, there's, may not everybody, but a lot of men might turn to those unhealthy coping strategies. A couple of beers, it might be the anger, it might be that sort of emotional disengagement where they just don't talk to anyone. Some people in sort of fitness and personal training, so there's things I see in students, and I've seen it in colleagues, I've seen it myself before, is excessive or over exercising.
Yes.
Because you can go all of a sudden, you're like, let's look at lockdown, okay, 2020, okay, and then especially January lockdown 2021, where, we're stuck in our houses in January, which was bleak. It was grey, it was miserable, it was cold. And actually you're still pushed, like, you can still go out and do your exercise and stuff. And I'm like, oh, I will. And I'll go out every day. And then, like, you find yourself, you become over-reliant on, exercise as a coping mechanism. So actually, we need to just be making sure we've, again, got that balance of what's good and what's bad. Exercise is supposed to be good for us. However, you can do too much. And then when you do too much, you put yourself in this sort of little, like, grey area where you can then pick up illnesses and stuff because your body isn't recovering. And that's, it's finding the right balance.
It was the Greek that said they had the Oracle of Delphi had a thing written on it says all good things in moderation. They also said know thyself, and the third one is that certainty breeds insanity. So you have to learn to go with the flow a little bit.
Absolutely.
But it might be an idea of actually, if we mentioned those 5 ways of well-being, the acronym is a useful way. Remember, it's the acronym CLAN. Which is something really useful that I've actually done training with the police around this, and something C is for connect. To actually, sometimes maybe you're at work and you're like feeling a bit out of sorts. Don't send the email. Go to the office or somebody else. Talk to them. Maybe have a couple of minutes of connection. Ask them about their life. Learning. Learning is really, that's the L. Learning a new skill. Learn to play the guitar. Learn Sudoku. Maybe learn about somebody else. Go and talk to them and find out about their life. Being active. That's the A. Being active. Maybe go to somebody else's office. Don't send the email and stay with them. Notice, the N for notice. Just pay attention to what is in the moment. Because we tend to live a lot in our past and a lot in our future. We kind of constantly fleeting back and forth and not really have full conscious awareness of what we are experiencing in the now. Then the G is for forgive. Give something. And maybe giving you time by going to somebody else. Don't send the email. Go and have a chat with them. Grab them a coffee. Go down to the cafeteria. Spend 5 minutes with them. And doing that on a regular basis can actually be really, really helpful. We insert those little moments in our day.
And it has to be a little moment. And I remember when our friends from Ofsted were in, and Andy sent out an email to, because he obviously probably wanted people to be out and about, to keep an eye on how things are going, but he encouraged people to be out walking around and talking to people, and I like that. I like now, as part of one of my roles as the teacher learning coach, I love the fact that it's makes my life more sociable. So I'm out there having conversations, going around, meeting people, going to different offices, and that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's fundamental. Actually, one of the things that I like about working here is there's a very social environment, and I see people all the time, and I can actually have to go to another building and see somebody I haven't seen for a while. But there are days when I actually come and I'm in a bad mood for whatever reason, and I kind of want to hide. But my team won't let me. They'll ask me. They're on me. What's the matter with you? Kind of thing,
And that's the thing. That's a beautiful thing, actually. The fact that people who you work with can notice when you're not at it. And like I said, I worked with the group of guys I've worked with in sports. I've worked with some of them for 15 years, and they will notice within 2 or 3 minutes of you being in the office if you're not your normal self. And then a lot of them will just go, just say, well, you okay? Do you want 5 minutes? And that is sometimes all it is. We might go and throw a ball around the office, or just step away from your desk, go down, grab a coffee. Costa, it's Costa. Having Costa on site is really dangerous because you find yourself in there all the time.
Financially, but I think it's really good.
It is great. And it's just and I think like that, having those sort of people in your life, the connections are so important. The people in your life, you know, and having the right people and having that sort of, who know you is absolutely massive.
But the other thing, and actually talking about, we talked a lot about social media already.
Yeah.
We mentioned that, and I mean, supposedly the average person, we spend 4.5 hours a day on our mobile devices.
Yeah.
We check our phones something like 70, 80 times a day, so that's 20,000 times a year. The average person spends 68 days a year on their mobile phone, right? And then just think what we're actually looking at on social media, where we have a narrative that actually, clickbait, rage bait is the word of the year, 2025. The way that these platforms are designed is to capture our attention. The best way to do that is through anger and fear.
Yeah.
So the idea that, for example, we slow down when we see a car crash, but we don't slow down when we see an act of kindness, because we don't need to, because our survival instinct is not equipped for that.
It's boring.
So but the other thing keeps you alive. So in a sense, social media is feeding a narrative of things going wrong all the time, anxiety, and then you get trapped into this, if you like, consumeristic capitalist narrative that in order to sell you something, they have to feel like you don't have it.
Yeah.
So, you constantly have this sense of inadequacy. And I think a lot of these, for men, feeds into this narrative of toxic masculinity.
Yeah.
The Andrew Tates of the world, the measurement of masculinity and success as having all the girls and the cars and the mansions.
Yeah.
I don't know, where do you sit in all of that?
Yeah, I 100%. So we've done tutorials and stuff on Andrew Tate over the last few years, and not so much since he's been, sort of less out there. But if you talk to students...
You mean in prison?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so if you talk to students and you go, opinion on Andrew Tate, the girls hate him.
Yeah.
I mean, boys would like his life. The cars, the houses, whatever it might be. But again, like it breeds that sort of harmful masculinity of believing that is the way that you should treat others, treat women. These are the things you should look for in life. Like, everyone should strive to have the best car or the biggest house or whatever it might be. But actually, like, you see, it's not just the Andrew Tates of the world. You see it online all the time of, I bought myself this 100-inch television. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, but why do you need to tell anyone? Oh. And then I find myself watching the video going, 100-inch television? Then I'm in. How much does a 100-inch television cost? And you find yourself pulled in, you go, and then sometimes you go... and
then your algorithm is full of 100-inch television.
My algorithm is sport. Okay, so in sport, the problem is you might see something like TalkSport, where they say something so outrageous, and then you're like, they can't say that. And then all of a sudden you're talking to people saying, they said this and they said that. And then you just find yourself, you're stuck in that, and then my algorithm is also food, parental stuff and sport. That's where I'm at. But I said, if you do one thing, then all of a sudden you see everyone with 100s or everyone with a massive, this is, you look at those renovation projects, and like all of a sudden you've got renovation projects all this, and you're thinking, how much did that cost? And stuff. I want a kitchen like that and stuff. And sometimes you've got to find that time, because that's when it becomes harmful. You've got to find those healthy changes. What can you do, differently? Like, sometimes it is just chuck your phone away, because the phone is, like I said, if we're spending that amount of time on our phone, sometimes we do like those digital well-being checks with students, and it might be, you're talking to them at, midday on a Monday. Right, how long have you been on your phone? Some people are like 30 minutes, 50 minutes. One person, 6 hours. You're like, what have you been doing? That means you've been on your phone since 6 o'clock in the morning, all the way up till now, essentially. What have you been doing? I've been on TikTok. But TikTok is like 10 seconds, and they've just done this. Don't take it in. And so they might get stuck looking at something, and then it becomes this, they become over-reliant on this sort of social presence in their life, which is actually someone else's. It's not, you might, I don't know if you see it here, but walk around college, you go into like the Costas, and you see a group of individuals together, 5 of them, all 5 of them on their phone, not talking to each other. You're like, what? What are you doing? It's, and it's that sort of over-reliance on it, isn't it?
And it's interesting because actually, I mean, the thing with technology, one of the challenges is that, for example, it is quite addictive, right? If you do something for 4 hours a day, it's addictive. But unlike addiction, for example, if you have a problem with crack cocaine, you just don't go to a crack house. If you have a problem with drink, don't go to the pub.
Yeah.
If you know, but with technology, because we need it for our survival, it's something that we need to manage. And it's a bit like, so the abstinence is not the solution. The solution is to change. You talked about food. It's like having a diet, having a digital diet. It's like, you know, if all the food you consume is high calorie sugars, you're going to end up putting on weight. And that's kind of, in a sense, what we're doing with technology and social media, right? We're just feeding ourselves really unhealthy stuff. So it's about kind of, one is choosing what you follow, but also not buying onto the narratives that come across, you know, like the Andrew Tate's, the Elon Musk's of the world, and the measure of success, which is kind of quite external. And we lost our sense of empathy and compassion somehow when we see other people as objects and means to an end. I think it was Elon Musk that says that empathy is the biggest problems of Western civilization, and I would say that I think lack of empathy is the biggest problem. You know?
Empathy is like, obviously working in the industries that I work in. Empathy is like one of the greatest skills you can have, because you have this sort of care for how someone is. You know, if I wasn't not an empathetic personal trainer, I wouldn't have the understanding of why this person's going through what they're going through. And actually, it's a ridiculously good skill. And I would say it's something that was, as if we look at the generations coming through, you know, the students that we're working with now, some of them aren't as empathetic as, you know, if I look at the students that I was working with when I first came here, you know, 15 years later, the students completely changed. They're not as empathetic. But I think it's a great skill. Because it's healthy. It's healthy to actually have things like want to be that emotional awareness of others. It's like integrity, isn't it? Actually having something about you where you care for people. And like, being able to care for someone is then able to notice when someone's not right. You know, and I sometimes I think you miss that in the current generations we see. You miss that sort of where maybe they don't pick up on as much of the cues that we might see. You know, we can go into an office and tell when someone's not on it, but actually they wouldn't be able to pick that up in their friends because they don't talk to each other.
Communication to the device.
They live off the Snapchat. You know, I mean, the Snapchat group chats and all that sort of stuff. You know, and that's where all their conversations lie. You know, and it's quite scary.
You talked about sort of empathy and compassion. You know, they're actually sort of being compassionate for another person suffering. You know, and I think that it's really good to be empathetic and compassionate with somebody else. I think what we often forget is to do that to ourselves. Have self-empathy. Actually, sometimes when I'm in a bad headspace, the way that I talk to myself in my own head. If I talk like that to a child, you would call social services on me. Do you know what I mean? There's a certain narrative, and sometimes in that stress, in that narrative, I may not be able to have a very nice view of myself.
And that's massive. I think it's a great point. The fact that people will find it really hard to be nice to themselves. You know, like if you do something wrong, but everyone's allowed to make mistakes. Do you know what I mean? Like it's completely normal to make mistakes, and I think like the natural go-to for people is, "Oh, you're an idiot," or like "That's your fault," you know, "You fool," whatever it might be. And actually, like, you know, sometimes you go, "Oh yeah, I've hold my hands up, made a mistake there," but actually, I can rectify it. You know, there's always a way around it. Do you know what I mean? And I think you know, having that sort of understanding of yourself is so important. And you know, I think understanding that things don't always have to be perfect. And this idea of perfectionism, like the perfect life, or the perfect being the imperfect employee. You know, we're not. You know, in a day, you can't be the perfect employee all the time. You know, there has to be this balance between this resilience training we did with Louise and the other mental health advocates yesterday was great because it talked about like how you should only work at this level of high performance for around about 15 to 20% of your day. And then the rest of it should be in this sort of relaxed area where actually you should be able to just go through like and just get bits done. But I think like some people go on like the other side of it and then be in this super stressed area. And then that sort of rings around to taking it out on yourself of like, oh, you've not completed that. You should have done that.
And also, who do we do it for? I remember reading a quote once that said, in 30 years' time, the only people remembering all the overtime you did will be your children.
Yeah.
You know, and it's the idea actually, you know,
Yeah, I love that.
and what do we, and we do it for an external reason, actually, and I think for me, something that's really, really important that I've discovered in adult life is living a life that's aligned with my values.
Yeah.
And not living a life that aligned with the goals of a society in a certain way of being.
Yeah.
What kind of man do I want to be?
Yeah.
How do I want to show up in the world? And then thinking about my choices. My choices taking me towards being the kind of person that... I went to a funeral today, right? Just before this, just over the crematorium. And it was about a man that actually died peacefully in old age. And he made a massive difference for a lot of people. He was part of a fellowship of recovery. You know, and I think... that is the kind of man that I want to be. Somebody that was there for others. Somebody that enjoyed life and lived with zest. And actually it's about thinking every choice that I make, does it take me nearer to being the kind of man I want to be? Or does it take me nearer to being the kind of man that I think the society expects me to be?
Yeah, and again, I'm doing this mentoring training, and they did a well-being moment, which was great. It's like, which award do you want to get that you'll never get? And it's like the one for being perfect, or the one for working the most hours, or for the one for being the most tired. But actually, when you look at those, they're all things you don't want to be, you know, like really, because like I said, it's about having an impact on people, you know, and like I said, it's, you want to be there for your kids or whatever it might be. But actually, like, people will always look and go, I want to be that person that everyone sees in the office at 8 o'clock in the morning, even though we start 8:30 or whatever it might be, and staying in till after hours doing work. Do you mean, like, you don't get an award for that? There's nothing at the end of the year we go, here's your bonus payment of X amount, although it'll be lovely, you know, but we don't get it. But, you know, you make your point about, you know, if you when you pass away, who's going to remember you, you know, and who's going to be there for you, and you want to think is who's going to be there, you know, at your funeral, and like you'd want to have an impact on enough people where actually there are people who remember you and remember what you were there for. But yeah, so you know, you might as well make decisions for you that make you a better person to others and yourself.
Yeah, it's about what legacy you want to leave. How do you want to be remembered?
Yeah.
I think that's important things to consider when we make these choices every day.
Yeah,
you know, we constantly making choices for our future, and you know, that's important.
Yeah, definitely.
So just looking through agenda completely. I forgot
I
about
don't
the
think
agenda.
we've done the agenda.
We've talked about this quite a lot, but I suppose that in the last sort of 5 minutes or so, actually, what do we want to say to people, especially people that are out there perhaps suffering, experiencing high anxiety, especially people. I mean, you and me, we're teachers now. We are grown-ups. We might not always have felt like this. No. You know, once upon a time, I would not be able to stand in front of a classroom or stand in front of a camera and talk fairly eloquently. But, you know, we are in a position now where we can say that. But what would you say to that person that is anxious, stressed, depressed, perhaps suicidal? You know, what advice do you have?
I guess for a key message for someone who struggles to speak up would be talking does not make you weak. Okay, it makes you feel connected, or makes you connect to people who can help you. It's also probably important to realise that you're not the only one who may be feeling that way. Far from it. There's, you know, if we look at, I saw, again, it was on Instagram or something like that, but if you went into a morgue of people who have just taken their own life, 75% of them would be men. But actually, like, so you're far from the only one feeling like your feelings are legitimate, even if you can't explain them. Because again, men, generally, you say, I feel down, but I don't quite know what it is that's putting me down. You know, silence doesn't protect you. You know, some people might think, I'll just keep it quiet. Actually, it isolates you from the things that might help, might stop you from being connected or getting to the right supports. And I think it's just like making sure that you take practical steps to help you today. Straight away, what can you do? What are the things that you can, the small mini changes, you know, there's a book, Atomic Habits, like James Clear, about, and he talks about the 1% change. So what small actionable steps can you make today? And it's got to be small. You know, if we look at how many people do make a New Year's resolution that actually sticks? Yeah. I'd love to know the percentage of people that can make a New Year's resolution that actually sticks. Because they try and do this whole massive change. But actually, the benefit would be in, like, make something, a really small change. You know, like for me, it might be something as simple as I might just try and read more, or I might try and take that time where actually I just sit in the office and I take a breath. I take that time just to settle. Do you know what I mean? It's, you know, whatever it might be. You know, and I think that's really important for people. You know, to realise that vulnerability will strengthen relationships, rather than, you know, if you were if you show your vulnerability to people, that generally, like, will strengthen your relationship with someone, because they realise actually you're a human being. Yeah. And I think that's massive. Like, at the end of the day, you don't deserve support, right? You need it sometimes. Like, and everyone has that right to get the help that they need, you know, and I think that's what people have to realise.
We're all worthy.
Yeah, yeah, and, you know, and again, if you need it, go and get it. Do you know what I mean? Like, get the help that you need to be it, because, like, there's no point. It's hard, isn't it, to, like, and for some people, they might get into that point where, you know, they feel like they can't have those conversations, or they don't feel like there's anyone out there for them. And to those people, I'd be thinking, you know, please, there is someone out there that you can trust. You know, it might be a counsellor, but you know, you might have a family member or a friend who's that person that you can just, that one person, all it takes, that little conversation, I think, just a couple of words, will then start the ball rolling. And that's sometimes the hardest step, sometimes is the smallest step, I guess, in a weird way.
Yeah. It makes a lot of sense. And actually, there's something there about we're human beings, we're not human doings, right?
Yeah.
And when we are being with ourselves, we have feelings.
Yeah.
And feelings, it's something about accepting that they are. They're there. You can't make them go away.
Yeah.
You can try very hard, but they will never go away.
No.
Especially some difficult emotions are difficult, like, for example, sadness.
Yeah.
Sadness is a hugely important emotion. What would the world be if we didn't have sadness?
Yeah.
We wouldn't have connection. We wouldn't have,
No.
empathy. So it's all there. All those feelings are there, and it's something about embracing them and allowing them to guide us.
Yeah.
And then the other thing about getting it wrong and making mistakes and being vulnerable. Actually, personally, I have learned a lot more from the things that I got wrong than from the things that I got right. Because those I don't need to change them. I'm good with that.
Yeah.
You know, and there's something that in my relationship with others, rupture and repair.
Yeah.
You know, every time when we have a disconnection, a fallout, or anything like that, it's an opportunity to deepen the relationship by sharing, hey, I got that wrong, I made a mistake, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
We find it very difficult to say sorry, just saying, hey, I got that wrong.
And I think normalising emotional conversations it should be encouraged. Do you know what I mean? Like, it becomes easier the more you do it, the more you have. Like, if I think about this conversation we're having today, 10 years ago, probably not.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Probably because we wouldn't maybe not have had the platform to be able to do it. It's now the platform's much greater for us to be able to have these conversations. But also, for men, I think honesty opened doors for others. You know, my hope from this conversation, you know, is that more people would come along and sit on man down and, you know, do it again or whatever it might be. But men generally model behaviour from other men. So you have role models, you have people you look up to, and you'd hope that, you know, again, like simple things like us trying to normalise boys get sad too. It's just something we want to have, those normalised conversations, and, you know, the students would model those behaviours, not necessarily saying they have to go and buy a T-shirt, but actually they know what it means. And again, like, emotional conversations can be just casual. Do you know, they don't have to be this big dramatic forward. You know, they don't have to be dramatic. Like, they have to be like full blown tears, everything. Sometimes it can just be a really simple conversation. It's like, I'm not feeling right today. You know, and you might go and take them for a coffee, go for a walk through Long Run Meadow, or whatever it might be. Actually, sometimes there's a really good piece of research I've seen. That sometimes it's a lot easier to talk to someone when you don't look them in the eye.
Yeah.
Like, I sometimes have my best conversations with my wife actually in the car, because we're not looking at each other. or we look forward, and like you sort of just have like, you can have like quite big conversations. Sometimes people, like students, struggle with eye contact, and a lot of people struggle with eye contact, especially on emotional side of things. So actually, if you sit there with someone, you're walking forward with them, then they might find that as an easier way to sort of have those open and honest conversations, if they're not having to look like someone's staring deep into your soul as you talk through the emotions. But yeah, I think that's normalising those conversations is like one of the things I would really look for people to try and do.
Which was the idea behind creating this space in this podcast, is for people to actually perhaps realise and feel more comfortable, and I suppose we're trying to model something, by being open with our emotions, that other people may feel like it's okay to do that. But I'm very aware, Dom, that we kind of coming to the end, but I'm very aware that Christmas next week, and just basically, yes, during term time, we are always here. People like Dom, like myself, our door are always open. There's loads of people in the college here to listen. I'm very conscious we're going to be closed for a couple of weeks, and just perhaps maybe to put a message out there about what support people can access if think, because Christmas can get tough. Christmas highlights the good and the bad. Right?
And again, like we talked earlier, where people will look at other people during, take a picture of the tree, and they have all these like hundreds of presents on the tree. It looks fantastic, or how nice their house looks on Christmas Day, how much food they've got on the table. And like for some people, they can see that and go, I don't have that. But I think like what can people do? There's obviously places that people can find support. So if they are really struggling, Samaritans, Shout, local services, in Taunton there's an Andy's Man Club, that sort of thing, where you can go and have those conversations. Within college, we've got the EAP, which is sort of another way you can go down through. And I'm sure like Rob and Louise will love me for plugging this, but Perkbox, okay, which is the app that everyone can download onto their phones, whatever. On there's loads of well-being stuff, like even simple breathing strategies, mindfulness techniques that they can go and use. But again, for me, it's trying to reach out to others, right? If you are struggling, it's having that really, again, I know that the step is probably quite big for some people, but one conversation can change the trajectory, all right? It can change the destination of how it's moving. And mental health is an ongoing practice at the end of the day. It's something you learn to cope. You learn to cope with, you learn the strategies that work for you, the ones that won't work for you. I think it's really important that people are happy to have those conversations. I think that there is what I would try to look for. And remember, for men, the most powerful thing they can do is realise that they can feel emotion. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's nothing wrong with being sad. It's, and like you can feel sad in a day. You can come in after a lesson, it can be an absolute shocker, and you go, that's made me feel quite sad. Do you know what I mean? And actually, that's fine. Like, it's normal. Like, these emotions, I know we've not got much time, but I think Inside Out, the film, Disney film Inside Out, is a great way of realising how emotions work in our heads, okay, and how each one tries to take over from the other. It's that constant process, that ongoing sort of battle. For people, it's just realising that when you feel that, get to that point, know what you need to do.
And also thank you for sharing all that. A couple of other options that you have for people. One of them locally here to Somerset is Mindline, part of Mind the Mental Health charity, 24-hour support line. You can ring it, and somebody will be there to listen anonymously. It's really helpful, and it has different aspects. It has a trans line, LGBTQ+. There's also obviously the Samaritans, which is also 24/7. And if somebody's having a problem, perhaps struggling with drink or drugs, there's things like Narcotics Anonymous, Alcoholic Anonymous, Cocaine Anonymous, and various so that you can Google all of these organizations, and they have phone lines that you can ring. There's no need to suffer in silence. I mean, there's a quote from the Buddha that says that pain in life is inevitable, but suffering is optional. So we can actually, you can't go through life without experiencing difficulty, but it's kind of what we do with that, know. And a problem shared is a problem halved, And actually, we have an opportunity of making a deep and meaningful connection with another human being, and that's priceless.
Absolutely, and I said the power is in having those conversations. Just and again, even a simple, it might be like talking to the Samaritans or talking to Calm, whatever it might be, but actually that conversation is something that can save a life. And there's a real power in people, and just knowing that there are people out there to support you. Like ourselves, there's mental health advocates at college, that sort of thing. Who you can reach out and who are more than happy to have those conversations with everyone. And I think that for me is one of the most powerful things. The fact that how powerful people can be in this situation.
Fantastic. So I think all we got to do is maybe it's an opportunity actually to wish everybody out there that's watching this, not now, but at some point they'll be watching it. We're gonna release this just before Christmas, so hopefully people will have access to it to see it. So happy Christmas, happy New Year to everybody, and see you all on the other side.
Have a great time, everyone. Take care.